All right, we're back. It's live. Is it me, or do these Wednesdays seem to come round so quick that you don't even know what day it is? It's like every 7 days, it's like bang, 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 and like after this one is finished of Nevermind the Ballast with Pitch BTCC, it's like I seem to be on to the next one straight away. It's absolutely crazy. But hello and welcome. It's good to see you all. Hi there, Charlotte. Hope you're good. We've got a cracking guest tonight. As you hopefully know, it's Zoe Timbrell from BTC Racing, which is overly cool. Love her to bits. She's a great woman, and we've shared some good cracks over the years with the driver Josh Cook as well. So we've had a right old few laughs. So Timbers85 has just joined, so hopefully she will send a request in a second. But like I say, here we go. She's sent a request, which is nice. Hopefully this works better than when Steve Ryder, isn't it? But yeah, I just stuck a shirt on. See me tan lines? How nice is that? But yeah, it's just connecting. And oh, Zoe! Oh,
hello.
All right. Hey, you okay?
How you doing? I need to turn the volume up.
That's all right. So you got your iPad sorted then?
Yeah, I did. I've just realised it's got very low charge, so I've had to relocate so that I can be nearer plugs.
Hey,
good planning.
You might laugh, but honestly, because I do these every Wednesday, I was just saying, it'll get to like 5 o'clock, 5:30, and I'm like, right, is everything set? And I look at my iPad and it's got like 11% battery in it, and I'm like, why did I not stick that on charge? Because you're so busy, aren't you? And like you know, being a team manager, I'm so busy like trying to do a bit of prep work, I completely forget, and you just sit there going, yeah, I'm sorted. No, mate. It's all
not yet.
It's all gone wrong, dear me. I've noticed you BTC lot. You're always in your kit. You're so professional.
We're so good, aren't we? I can hardly say to the boys, "Where's your kit?" if I'm not wearing my own. But the really the astute amongst the audience will notice this one is rather fresh from the packet because it's still got some creases in.
Hey, that's another thing because we're both self-employed, aren't we? And you always find, don't you, when you're on a different job, you'll always get given a package with your clothes in, and the first day you're always like you could take it off and it'll just go back into a square, doesn't it?
Yeah, you just put it away, put the label back on, and send it back. Yeah, because so I got this. I've had this for ages, but obviously we've not needed it, even though it's nearly August.
Absolutely crazy, isn't it? And I was just saying to people, you know, team manager at BTC Racing, it's an interesting job title, that, because if I went down the paddock, it would mean something different, probably in every different team. Is that me being silly, or is that right?
Yeah, no, it does. And it really depends on who's in the team, what skills you've got, what's needed. So I'm, as you mentioned, self-employed. So I work for the team part-time. It's not a rigid, 2 days a week kind of job, because you can't really switch off from it for 3 days a week. It's sort of a trickle all day, every day, kind of keeping an eye on stuff and deadlines, reaching deadlines and stuff, which today's been one of those days. So for me, it sort of means that my role is about organisation associated specifically with the weekends at the moment, and just the general logistics, whereas other team managers manage the team in the workshop, they manage the mechanics. We have a chief mechanic that does that for us back at the workshop. So yeah, it is different for everybody, which is actually quite a nice thing about it, really. Sort of make it mold it around the person, really.
And is that what you signed up for? You know, when you were going to BTC Racing for the team manager job, did you know exactly what you were going to be doing, or was it like, oh, I'll be doing all this, and you got there and it was like, nah, you're going to be doing this, mate? Sorry.
Well, it was kind of, I sort of got thrown in at the deep end a little bit, because I joined the team 3 days before the first round in 2017. So literally, I arrived at the workshop and we were sorting hospitality units, we were sorting all sorts. There was lots of stuff going on. We were packing the trucks in anger for the first time. So it was quite intense, which was really good. I really enjoyed that. It made it quite interesting. And yeah, it has evolved, and they're great. They've been a great group of people to work with. So I'm just really lucky. I work with some really talented people. So yeah, no, it's good. I'm lucky.
Hey, we it's interesting, isn't it? Because that team, I remember that team being, and Bert Taylor, who co-owns the team with Steve, I remember that team being an absolute no runner at the back with not very good cars, no money, just Bert, who is an absolute racer. And all of a sudden, they've got Chilton, they've got Cook, they've got Creasy, they've got probably every person that everybody from a touring car demographic could love racing for you guys now and battling for the championship. It's just unbelievable what you have done. You must feel proud to be part of that.
Oh yeah, so proud. I mean, even after our first year, I mean, we had really sort of delicate expectations for our first year. We didn't want to go out. We didn't expect to go out and win straight away, and we got our first podium in the first year. That was amazing, and our first independent win. And so we ended the first year on a high. But each year we've taken these huge steps, which has been really quite awesome. And yeah, this year, I mean, so insanely frustrating to be waiting, but we've had this great package with the cars, the drivers, the team, everything. But we've just not been able to get going yet. So we're sort of primed and ready, waiting to see what the season's going to look like. Really, it's quite exciting. But yeah, we've got some great drivers on board this year. It's going to be interesting, very interesting.
I just think it's amazing to see where you've come from, because some new touring car fans won't believe me when I say they were at the back and they were not very good, and they just look like also rans. And I cannot believe the turnaround has been awesome. And I remember, so your first year would have been 2017 with the team.
Yeah.
And you had FK2 Hondas, which are the Hondas.
Chevrolets.
Oh yes, sorry, it was Chevrolets. Was it Dave Newsham and
Chris Smiley? Yeah.
Chris Smiley, yeah. Wow.
That was our first year with those cars. They were old when we got them, weren't they?
Yeah, you'd had them before. I remember. Did you buy them back off Power Max Racing or something? Yeah. It was crazy, wasn't it? But
yeah, so they were familiar.
Yeah, but the to evolve like that was amazing. But the FK2s in 2018, I remember. I think, was it Dan Lloyd who won at Croft his first? Yeah. That was amazing. What was it like?
That was crazy. So that race, so he started on pole, and that way I typically watch a race from the garage, so I've got the TV feed and the timing. But that race I just watched from the pit wall with the timing screen, literally just fixating on the gap between him and second place. And all I did was look at that gap and count down the laps. It was amazing. It was because at Croft we just had to rebuild after massive damage at Oulton Park. Do you remember with Chris and Dan both got caught up in that lap 1 disaster? So the team had worked so hard. They were still working really hard late into the night on Friday and Saturday night at Croft. So to get that was just, it was like the perfect end to the weekend, really. Yeah, one of the amazing highs that you get in motorsport.
Absolutely mega. And do you know what I remember even more? And it's not because Dan or Chris is a better driver than the other, but Chris Smiley winning at Rockingham, just epitomises what British touring cars is about and how much that meant to him and his dad Charlie. Because I really like those guys; they're good people, and that result. Because I know that Chris had quite a close connection with Bert, who owned the team as well. That must have been exceptional.
Oh, it's insane! It was so emotional. Chris's first win. It was so. Just before that, obviously, Dan had got our first win, and I'm sure that Chris would have loved to have been able to give us that win, the first win. But yeah, winning that race at Rockingham, it was just so emotional. And then it being the last British touring car race ever held at Rockingham, it was just awesome. Yeah, so emotional. I'm not. I think I got something in my eye, possibly. At the end of that race, it was just, yeah, it was incredible. It's just those are the moments, like the real standout moments, and sometimes it's not an obvious moment, but it was incredible. It really was, and he just drove. It was incredible. So I was so happy for him.
Yeah, he massively deserved that. I remember seeing him when we went to interview him, and he was like just over the moon. And I think people forget sometimes how much these drivers actually work to get in a British touring car. I remember driving against Chris in Mini Challenge, and
Yeah.
his dad come up to me and was like, "Paul, what can we do to get him into British? We need to make the step." And I was like, "Charlie," I said, "I've been pretty lucky with sponsors I've had and negotiations, and I honestly didn't think I'd see him in there." And he was in, then he was out, and then he was back in,
Yeah.
and then didn't like have a drive this year, and now he's with Accelerate.
Yeah.
So
I know. I'm so
it's
pleased to see him on the grid. Yeah, they are. They're great guys. As well. His dad, Charlie, is a lot of fun as well. And yeah, like you say, Chris and Bert are very close. So it was, yeah, real special. But it's so hard, and it's so. I mean, from when we finish racing, the stuff going on behind the scenes before you even finish the season, as you know, talking to sponsors, talking to partners, what can be done for the following year, because it's so easy to find yourself without anywhere to go if you don't have the money at the right time. And yeah, I was really pleased to see that Chris had landed. Having worked with him for 3 years, you know, I was really pleased to see that it was with Accelerate. So
Zoe, that's a good point, that because I've spoken about it a bit, but it's so difficult to get into touring cars, and once you're there, Chris could have won the British Touring Car Championship twice on the trot. But what people who are watching don't understand is that doesn't really mean anything. I remember I spoke to Colin Turkington the other day, and he was like, "You just don't understand what goes on behind closed doors." And
yeah.
could you, with your team role, do you must see a lot, and the emotions the drivers go through. I mean, and I'm sure at the back end of that year, you must have seen some things with Chris maybe that you thought, well, I don't know if he's going to be here because of the, because of the financial side of things. Is that what kind of stuff you see? It must be quite disheartening.
Yeah, it's really frustrating because it's much as we all love to believe it's just about talent, it's really not, as you know, and it doesn't matter how amazing someone's year was. They're so reliant on their partners and what's going on in their partners' worlds as well, with regards to how their industry's looking. I mean, we've already seen this year is going to be a challenge because of what's been going on. But yeah, it's so difficult because towards the back end of the season, really you want people to be focusing on getting the best out of the end of the season. But there is this massive pressure of having to pull in the sponsorship required that is, and some drivers it does get to people, it gets to teams, it gets to drivers, and it's really hard to balance. I love to think that we're operating in an engineering challenge, but really it's a marketing exercise and it's a sport. So everything is so important, not just one thing. Talent doesn't automatically mean you're on the grid. I mean, there are lots and lots of talented drivers who would be great on the grid, but if they don't have the backing, then it's sort of a no-go, really. So yeah, it does add an extra. It means that all of the drivers are really having to be commercial managers for themselves, marketing machines. Well, you know what it's like.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. And, I think that's one of the reasons I dropped off the face of the planet in British touring cars. I'm going to tell you something now that I've never, ever told anybody.
I won't tell anyone.
I think it's the time, because it was 10 years ago, but also you remind me of the lady that used to look after me, a lady called Sandra Humphreys, who you probably know, Marvin Humphreys' wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Sandra's a lovely person. They used to run me at Tech Speed Motorsport.
Oh, wow.
So they used to run me.
Yeah.
And I ran with them since I met them in year 2000, and I drove with them from 2000. Went to Vauxhall for 2 years, but took Marvin with me, Sandra's husband, and Sandra was team manager of Tech Speed, running the Class B touring cars. So I'm going to tell you something interesting now. So we had a sponsor called sunshine.co.uk,
Mm-hmm.
and they were great people, really looked after us, Chris and Claire Brown. But Marvin had to. I was every weekend I was racing. I didn't quite have the funds, but we just struggled through and got a little sponsor for 500 quid, or someone to pay for the tyres there, here, or something, pay for the entry.
Yeah.
And Toka were very good to us. I've got to say, they helped us out, because you're supposed to pay for the whole year, but they didn't. Anyway, so we went by, and we got to Snetterton. No, we got to the race before. It was halfway through the year, and it wasn't looking good. And Marvin and Sandra, who are normal working class people like me and you, they put their pensions into my racing.
Wow.
But no one knows this. They put the pensions in my racing for the rest of the year, underwritten by sunshine.co.uk.
Yeah.
And that really didn't mean anything, because they could go bust and that would be us.
Yeah.
Done. I'm getting quite upset about it, actually. And
amazing.
That got me through, and I always love that about motorsport, is if you're a racer, you'll always try and help someone out, won't you? And it's like Bert Taylor for me, who's your boss, and Steve Goodman, who you know, they're good people, and you need racers, don't you?
Yeah, you do. I mean, it's such a, like you say, it's so, I mean, that would have been so insanely stressful for you. I imagine going from round to round, not knowing where your fuel bill was coming from, you know, what your tyres were going to be like, you know, having to worry about finding that takes you off thinking about the other stuff, about preparing to actually race. And it weighs really heavy on you, those kind of stresses and strains associated with finding budget. And you know, like all race teams, we are we're always on the lookout for new partners, and you know, nothing is a given. You can't take anything for granted. There's no, like you say, you can win 2 back-to-back championships. It doesn't mean something, but you find a way. You make it happen somehow, and there is this amazing spirit in motorsport where everybody is like does look out for each other, which is such a nice. We're fiercely competitive, but there is a really nice feel of genuine looking out for people up and down the grid. And you know, when you see teams postponing their plans for the year, or drivers dropping out, you feel for them, and you feel sad that they're not going to be there. And yeah, it's such a tight knit and emotional kind of it. I can understand what you say about them putting their pension in. That's incredible. But I imagine that to them it was like the right thing to do, and they wanted to see you carry on. So awesome. Such an amazing story.
Amazing. I've never told anyone that, but it's just because you reminded me of Sandra. But you know, that Sunshine did pay them back. It was fine. But I remember at the time it was stressful because Marvin, who run me in the Integra, he was like, mate, you know, we honestly, you know how much a front bumper costs. What is it now? Well, it was about 750 quid, 500 quid or something. And if you crack one of them, I used to crack one every time I went out.
If you could just go light on the front damage, please.
You know what I mean? You know when you're like, I remember being behind Giovanardi, and we were on the podium that weekend, and that's what made it amazing. It was the first weekend they had some money, and they had the car all straightened up, the splitter was all straight. Wow. They spent some proper money, and we got on the podium. That's why it was quite emotional.
Oh, amazing!
Honestly, some of the stuff you just think, oh, and there's still drivers out there now who can't afford to crack a bumper. I know that. That for a fact. But we were talking offline, weren't we, about how I think ITV and British Touring Cars, they do such a good job at making the championship look amazing that people don't know these little pitfalls that happen, like Andrew Jordan having to leave and Power Max having to just step down for this year. It's real difficult, isn't it? And you see it through the eyes of somebody that'll never. I don't see it because I'm not involved in a team anymore, but the stresses you go home with must be unreal, because you have to keep the ship sailing, don't you? That's your job.
Well, so you have to keep it sailing, you have to keep the cars on the grid, they have to look amazing, because it doesn't matter how much you're struggling, you still have commitments with partners to make, and you still have to put on a good show, and you know, you need the cars to be reliable, you know, and you know, the more money you spend and the more new parts you put on a car, the better reliability. When you start pushing things in their life, you're running the risk of things failing, and you can't, no one wants public failures, you know, because those sorts of failures are so public. And yeah, you can't, I suppose it's a bit like a swan motorsport. It looks really lovely and beautiful on the top, but underneath it is like going crazy, like wildfire under there.
It's me with my shirt on, but my boxer shorts on. Nothing's going crazy down there, Zoe.
That's good to know. Although I think that was quite popular.
I've got shorts on. Just for anyone wondering, I've got shorts on. Don't worry, and I'm wearing socks.
Blimey.
You know, I'm going to take you to the end of 2018, and you'd had such a great year. FK2s, Hondas were absolutely stunning, but then you found out, didn't you, that you had breast cancer at the end of 2018, and that in its own is unreal for you to, you know, just trying to get on with things. And what must that have been like?
I have to say, so I got my diagnosis. I was waiting for my diagnosis at Knock Hill, and then I got my diagnosis after Knock Hill. So I was lucky enough to get my diagnosis and have surgery almost straight away. And so I arrived at Silverstone on the Friday, having had my surgery on the Monday. And I mean, this is where the paddock is so incredible. I was the most hugged person that weekend. So many people just came up to me and gave me a hug. It was amazing. And I kind of have been this whole really rubbish journey of dealing with it all, kind of carried through on this wave of people being awesome and really looking after me. The team were amazing. I literally, you know, I was there, but was I really that much use at times? Everyone just stepped up, helped, took worries away, stopped me stressing about anything. It was really incredible, and I was so pleased to still have some normality, and have good distractions as well. So I had, it was a bit of a wild old time, really. But I will take this opportunity to say nobody should think they're too young, because even at the very young age of 32, I believed I was too young to get breast cancer. So I literally did not believe it even possible. So it was a bit of a shock, but like I say, physically and mentally, I've been carried by my work colleagues, my friends, and my family, who have literally done whatever I've needed and allowed me to still go racing, even when perhaps I shouldn't have been. I think at Silverstone, I got shouted at by my sister for running up the pit lane to put in a protest. And I've just had surgery, and without being too, like, you know, clear about it, I wasn't ready for anything to be moving. I'd not long had stitches. And I returned to like a lot of really cross faces. But, you know, I had to get it in. The protest was important. My sister's obviously on. She remembers. But I spent most of the rest of that season being told, stop doing stuff, stop running around, go and sit down, take a rest. Have you eaten? Have you taken your medication? And every time I was like, no, I forgot my meds, I'm sorry. No, I haven't eaten. Yes, I'll do it now. So everyone was great. I just so well looked after, really. It was quite something.
Do you know what I most remember about that and your situation was Thruxton? I was sat in the back of the Dan Mayo's truck, or Alan Gow's truck, and you come up and you did not look well. And Josh Cook I think Josh Cook won one of the races. And you asked to see Dr. Trafford, who's our chief medical advisor and doctor for touring cars. And honestly, you look amazing now, Zoe. But you looked not great. You honestly shouldn't have been there. Like I was like, what is going on? But you were saying about your chemo and everything, and you needed to have a lie down. Can you just take us through that? Because I only remember bits of it. I don't want to get...
So it was really, so I had to be, my doctor always said you should do the stuff that does make you happy, because if you stop doing that, then, you know, life will seem really rubbish. But so halfway through the morning, so for most of 2018, my sister, her husband, and my nephew came to the races so that they could be around if I needed, like, telling to do stuff, essentially. And they arrived at the circuit, and I was like, oh, I've got these funny leg marks on my leg. And I'd had a bit of a temperature, and there was a bit of a sepsis concern. So it was just before race. No, it was after race 1, just before race 2. And Damo literally like forced me onto a buggy into the medical centre. And the doctor was like, oh, you need to go to hospital now. And I still had my safety radio. So I still had the team's radio on me. And I was like, oh, so race 2, can I go after race 2? And they were like, no, go now. So I was like, well, let me just go and hand over. I mean, it was so frustrating. I watched the second race in the car on my phone. And then as I was waiting for the doctor to come in. And literally, as Josh Cook took the lead in that race to win, my doctor walked in, and I looked at my sister, and she looked at me and she was like, you should really give this your attention. So I had to, it was horrible. Of course, then there was no way of me watching it back. And then I think David Anderson said something on the television. So then my sister and I started getting messages, am I all right? And I stayed overnight, and then they discharged me in the morning. But that was one of a few occasions where I made not a bad decision, but I probably pushed myself a bit too far. And I'd like to say that I learned from that, but I probably didn't.
But like, I always think that it doesn't matter if you're a driver, a number 1 mechanic, a 2 mechanic, an engineer, like a team manager. You're a racer, aren't you? You're competitive, so it that kind of stuff gets put on the back burner, I think. Yeah. Do you not think it's bad?
Yeah, definitely. I think there was one occasion last year where I was too poorly, because obviously I finished treatment at the end of last year, but you get like a build up in your system, like a cumulative effect. And so it was kind of getting harder as the year went on. And at Croft, I didn't make it to qualifying. And so I bought a camper van so that I could travel around England and Scotland last year in between treatment and racing. And I just didn't feel well enough to go up there at all for qualifying. So I watched qualifying in bed. By the end of qualifying, I was packing the camper and I was literally ready to go. I was like, I can't do this. I don't have enough information. I don't know what's going on. I had obviously the live feed and the timing screen, but still it wasn't enough. I needed more. What's happening? So yeah, I just like, I'm going. And I think I was living with my sister at the time, and before I left, I could see her literally eyeing me up and down, because this wasn't long after Throxton, like checking out, should she be driving? Are we gonna have to go up there and get her again and take her off? But yeah, it's what lights that fire, isn't it? You know what it's like, and it doesn't matter what the racing is that you're involved with. Even if I go with friends karting, I want more information. I want more. I need. You just want to know everything, don't you? And you just can't get rid of it. It's it's addictive. It's like personality flaw at the same time. I don't know. But it's awesome at the same. It's kind of addictive, really. It
is. It's an interesting passion that we have, isn't it? And it gets us into all sorts of trouble, but when it goes right, it's just the best thing ever. And it's interesting, like I was going to say to you, actually, you know Christian Dick from Speedworks? So you know, obviously, his wife, Amy.
Yeah.
she's had the
She's,
same. Yeah, she's had the same trouble as you, hasn't she? From
yeah, she's been an amazing support. There's a fair few people actually came forward to me when I got my diagnosis, because initially I was going to keep it, I wasn't going to talk about it, but then I kind of realised actually I have a responsibility, because I was silly enough to think it wasn't an issue. And quite a few people came forward and said, actually, I've been through the same. And there's been several people and Amy is one of them, that's been incredibly supportive of me through the whole process. Even just little things like, don't be surprised about this, because there's a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, my hair's different, and just having other people say, yeah, I went through that too, like, is a really powerful. I'd not experienced it before, but a really powerful thing. So she's had some messages from me over the last 18 months of me literally being like, really, is this what's going on? Like, is this normal? And her being like, yeah.
that, that is so amazing to have somebody like that.
Yeah.
Who, that you can chat to, because Amy as a person is she's just got the best sense of humor, the best husband. They've got like one of the best drivers, Tom Ingram. They're just great. I love them.
They are great.
And they only live up the road, but that must be just so much, so supportive. And I can see people, when you're talking, they're pressing the heart button and they're speaking about it and saying you're a great ambassador. I love this one. RGS helmet design. You have Castrol GTX as blood.
I like it. Maybe that's what it is.
We've been around too long, haven't we? The minerals have got in us. It was an amazing season, though, wasn't it? You obviously had not the great things that went on, but Josh Cook, what a star. I mean, my word, just taking that, taking the team to the last weekend and nearly, staying involved. Just brilliant. What great morale for the team.
Oh, amazing. Josh fitted into the team from day one. And that's, all teams have their personalities, and he fits really well with our team personalities. We have a lot of people that are with us now that were with us at the beginning 4 years ago. And bearing in mind he was new car, new team, new engineer, all in that year, that was a lot to deal with. And like you say, to take it down to the last, to be in the mix at the end was just, I don't think my heart dropped below 100 that whole weekend. It was just ridiculous.
What a guy. I love him. As a whole, it was great because, Chris had some great results as well. But Josh, for me, is probably one of the best British touring car drivers and one of the best engineers that I know of. A very clever, switched on kid. The other thing with Josh is that I always find he needs a bit of, and we were speaking offline about mental strength and things like that.
Yeah.
You always have to keep an eye on Josh, I think, because he's quite an intense, intricate character, and you have to. And one of your jobs must be to see if he's just okay. Does he need anything else? And just some jokes in, because I know his mechanics love to throw some practical jokes in, and he thrives off that, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. He's quite a thinker, isn't he? Because he's got that engineering understanding. And I'm not a driver or an engineer. I have an understanding of both, but not on any super deep level. But there must be a point at which you just end up going around in circles internally if you're thinking about stuff, trying to balance things off against each other. And yeah, you can tell when Josh goes quiet, definitely it's time for some jokes, because that for him, if he's joking and is relaxed, then he's in a good place. The being relaxing is really important. He's got a really great relationship with his crew as well, and his engineer as well. It's really nice, actually. He is definitely one to watch this year. Well, I think all three of them are, of course.
I think you're dead right. I think Chilton who I know is one of the fastest people over one lap. Great at racing, don't get me wrong, but one of the fastest people I've ever set eyes on a lap. I think he's going to push Josh in qualifying, and that's going to help Josh massively. In the races, I think Josh is a clever kid, and Creasy as well will be learning massively. God love him.
Yeah, well, I mean, really, when you think about it, he's year 2, sharing, data and experience and insight with those two. I mean, what an awesome situation to be in year 2 of British touring cars for him, to be sat down with those two, looking at the data and asking about where he can improve. I mean, I think this year's going to be a good year for him as well. It's just so exciting. Can we go racing again?
And it's not far off as well. But I spoke to Creasy quite a lot in the pre-season, and he asked me where I should be looking, and I was like, I think you should be speaking to BTC, because if you can get information off Tom I don't think Tom was signed by then, but off Josh, I think you'll be in a winner. And how you guys operate is definitely, there's places for some people and some places are not for others. I don't think so. I think it's perfect for him, isn't it? But it'll be great to see him get on. The other thing I was going to ask you about, Zoe, was, and this might be a difficult one for you, mate. Silverstone National Circuit back in 2019. Josh needed all the points he could get. I think it was raining, and Chris Smiley was looking after his own sponsors, his own partners, his own people. From what I know, what I heard, he really should have maybe pulled over, and I don't think he did. I might be getting this wrong, but I just remember there was a bit of trouble going on, and that must have fell right on your lap. And if it did, what was it like?
So it's the age-old debate, isn't it, of driver interests versus team interests, and we see it in touring cars, see it in F1, and it's never comfortable, and I'm always sort of in the middle. I try to, obviously I work for the team and I represent the team's interests, but also what's right for the team is for the drivers to be in a good place too. And that was really difficult, because obviously the win meant a lot to Chris. Not the win, the podium meant a lot to Chris, and equally the point meant a lot to Josh. And it was a really difficult time, as you can imagine. And I think Chris did what was right for him at that point and made the decision. And I think, it was a really difficult situation. It was probably not what was right for the team at the time, or for Josh and his points. But it was a painful time, made more painful by Brands Hatch, but tried to not dwell on it too heavily because couldn't do anything about it. But I think the really important thing with all stuff like that is that you learn, whether it's as a driver, as a team manager, as a team, as a group of people who come up with a plan. As long as you learn for next time to be in a different situation, to handle things differently together. And I think we have, and we did. But that was like literally the first time we've ever had an issue like that. And it was painful for many, many reasons. But
it must be, because I know you do. You don't just do this job. Marketing is a big thing for you as well. So you probably have to deal with relationships all the time. So do you think that kind of thing helps, because you've kind of got loads of different little things you've got to think of, and the knock-on effect? I mean, you've always got that in your mind.
Yeah, it's trying to keep everyone as happy as you can, and knowing that everyone won't get what they want, because that's life. But just trying to balance that, and then really all about managing expectations. I think the thing that I've learned the most over my, I don't know, however long in the paddock, is about managing people's expectations, and making sure that everything's really open and honest, and we're clear about what we expect, and they're clear about what they expect, and that there's nothing unsaid, because you don't have time in those situations to be explaining in detail. So we've done the maths, and this is what we need to be doing. There's no time. We have to just trust. Everyone just has to trust each other. And relationships, because tensions get so high in motorsport, as you know, are really difficult to manage at times.
Yeah, especially with the bunch of idiots we have to deal with, eh?
Oh.
Listen, Zoe, I think it'd be wrong if I didn't speak to you about this, but you are the only woman in the pit lane who's a team manager. And as well as I think that's amazing, I think what people don't see or get is that I actually, and this is my opinion, British touring cars is very well represented by women. Chief mechanics, number ones, number twos, data engineers, women are very well represented. Motorsport in general, have we done enough? If we haven't, what do we do? How do you see it?
You're right. I think the touring car paddock is really inclusive. We've got lots of females in there, in a range of roles, which I always think is really nice, because you've got people representing those jobs to other women who might be interested in motorsport. I think when, as an example, I think when F1 closed down and just ran as the race side, and then they didn't take any of the additional media that they would normally take, and they were down to just race team staff, it went down, the number of women in that paddock went down dramatically, which is a real shame, because it means there are less mechanics and engineers in the paddock, which is a real shame. There are in Formula One some really great, strong female role models, and I was particularly inspired into motorsport by Lena Gade, although I didn't want to be an engineer. I did want to win Le Mans though. I still do want to win Le Mans, who doesn't? So it's really great to have those role models. I think British Touring Cars does a great job of that. It's just making sure that people are aware of motorsport as being a career choice, and also what roles within motorsport there are. Because there actually aren't that many. It's a very small industry, small community, really. And so, which does make it hard to get into, but I think it's hard to get into for everybody, because it's such a small group, really.
It is. It's interesting, and I remember, and someone summed it up perfectly to me. It was Carl Mitchell, who is, what is Carl Mitchell's job title? Is he number one on?
Isn't he assistant team manager?
I think he is assistant team manager, isn't he?
Yeah.
For Ferrari and BMW. He summed it up for me on International Women's Day. He had a picture of the whole WSR team, and he actually put, Happy International Women's Day, but to me, I just see hard workers, and it had WSR got quite a few women in the picture, and I thought that was perfect.
That's awesome.
Because if you're good enough, then you have the job, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I don't understand how it is for women, because I'm a man. I don't understand. That's why I was asking you, how you feel about it.
It is, and it hasn't always been. It has been a challenging. But I think it's challenging to work in male-dominated environments as a female, anyway. Just because there's a different kind of energy and different. It's just a societal thing, really, as much as it is anything else. But strangely, I've always thought and feel and do believe that nobody can afford to employ the second best engineer if the first engineer is better. You'd always go, it doesn't matter male or female, you'd always employ the best engineer. The same with mechanics, you'd want the best. You wouldn't, because that's actually all that matters. Winning matters, doing the best job matters. But it's hard to know how to deal with, how to encourage more women in, because I can't understand why more women wouldn't be interested, because I'm hooked. But yeah, it is a difficult one.
Yeah, it is. And but for me, British touring cars is leading the challenge, and
Yeah,
I'm glad you agree with that, because
yeah, definitely.
I'm up and down the pit lane all the time with everything that goes on. So I see some good stuff. I think it's cracking. The other
Yeah.
thing I'm going to ask you about, and it would be wrong for me to swerve away from it because we like to keep things current on Nevermind the Ballast, is I have seen on Twitter some not very nice things being said by girls accusing guys in sectors of motorsport of alleged harassment and other things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's got a bit of traction and people are talking about it. Not a
Yeah.
nice thing to ask anybody, but you know, what do you think about that? And is that something that is it obviously exists? I'm not something. How do we address something like that? What is going on?
Well, yeah, it's really disappointing to hear that it's occurring in our industry, like I imagine it occurs in lots of industries. I don't know if I've lost signal or
Oh, you're
can you.
back.
I'm back. Sorry, yeah, I don't know what happened then. So I'll just start again. So obviously it's horrendous that these girls have been made to feel like this. It's awful. I think it's really important that people feel able to speak up about these things, that they don't feel like they're alone, or that they shouldn't speak up about these things, because that's where the power is, by forcing people to stay quiet. So I think it's important for people to speak up, and I think it's also something that we have to all be aware of, and all really mindful of. And these things need to be taken seriously in the appropriate fashions, taken seriously, obviously. But yeah, it's really sad, and it really doesn't help. And I don't think I don't think it's a fair characterization of the industry either, because although, don't get me wrong, I've experienced challenging relationships with males in the industry and outside of the industry, and females inside and outside, and they've been, at the time they felt like the most horrendous, and they have been on occasion horrendous. But having the ability to speak out and find other people that you can talk to about these things is obviously really important. And I think it's great that these girls have been able to speak out together as well. I think that's given them the power, and taken all the power away from those that sought to control them. As it's their control, isn't it?
Yeah, like you said, it's such a difficult one to cover as well, isn't it, Zoe? But I'm glad you answered it, because I have to ask the question.
Yeah, no. I think it's great that these things are being brought up. They're not being hidden away and silenced, and people need to know that it's not acceptable, and the industry doesn't accept it, won't accept it. And then and I think when industries take hard lines on things, that and everybody needs to be held to a standard, like everybody. And I think that's the best that we can do, really.
Yeah.
It's a difficult one. It's tough. It's horrible.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. But I'm glad you answered that, because a lot of people are appreciating you talking about that. So thank you, Zoe. Listen, I asked people if they get some questions in. I'll pick a few, because I've chatted much again. I can't shut me up, can you? What we got here, Jade messaged Pitch BTCC before, said, hi guys and girls, I have a question for tonight. I've been trying to get into motorsport, but I'm finding it difficult at the moment. I already have my level 1 in mechanics and work as an apprentice technician. My dream is to get into motorsport mechanics. Is there anything else I can do to help me get into it? And what would be a big boost for me to be recognised by teams? Thank you and stay safe. It's actually a question a lot of people ask, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's massive. So although I'm not a mechanic, what I wanted to understand how cars worked better. a while ago, and so I actually volunteered as a mechanic for a club team, and I got so much experience. I learned a lot. I made some amazing friends, obviously, but I did, just volunteered and ended up, they covered my expenses, and that obviously looks really good on your CV, and it's good to learn just how a race weekend works from the inside in a less pressurized environment. When you get work experience on a race team, it's really difficult for people to spend time teaching and showing on a race weekend because there isn't the time and the stakes are too high. And so having it on a club weekend, a lot more relaxed and great experience and a lot more opportunities. And I know club teams would welcome people offering their services to help. So that's what I would do.
That is the best advice ever. Honestly, I looked at the question and I was like, I really don't know. Right, we'll ask you. That was brilliant. That you're dead right. There's no time, is there? There's like free practice, bang, free practice, bang, qualified, bang. Right, well, sorry, I've got to know. It's like,
it's impossible.
We got a good one here, actually. I like this one. I've met Ty before. Ty Cuthbert. He says, where do you see Creasy coming in the championship with his new team and car? I'd say in the barriers. No, I'm joking.
Don't say that. Right, that happens now at Donington. It's your fault. So I think the Jack Sears for Creasy all day long. The Jack Sears needs to be is his focus. I think for him, literally stepping forward each weekend, consistency in points, and the Jack Sears. He could. I definitely see him pushing top 10. Podiums could also be a thing too, and that would be amazing. I'd love to see him have his first podium. I think it would be amazing. And so that's where I think Creasy, he's going to be brilliant.
Yeah, I'm so with you. I would drop a live transmission to see that baldy heated fruitcake on a podium. Right said Fred. Yay!
It would literally be amazing. Really would. It just getting out of the car. I think I'd love to see him get out of the car.
Could you imagine? Hey,
Parc Ferme.
Oh my word! It'd be worse than when I won. Yeah, I did win a race. What? Hey, Zoe, do you know what's really cool about this is everybody is answering questions themselves as well.
Wicked. That's so
trying
cool.
to help each other out. I love that. I like that about motorsport. It's really cool. So yeah, guys, listen, you keep doing that. It's no problem at all.
Nice, definitely.
We've got one here. CPE photo. Just a quick one, actually. When hiring for a role within the team, what qualities are you seeking as a priority? I know that you probably don't directly employ people, but you'll have a say, won't you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, assuming that they have the technical, the skills required for that job, the actual requirements. I think a lot of it is about attitude, and you need to have a can-do, will do whatever is required to get this car back out on the grid kind of attitude. Work whatever hours are required. You have to, it's that kind of mentality. I think the mentality side and the attitude side is kind of, I wouldn't say it's more important than the skills, but you can teach someone skills, can't you? It's harder to teach them an attitude. And just their not ever giving up kind of attitude, whatever happens, is quite important really in motorsport, I think.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. Definitely, I'm with you. I've got one here from Sophie Middleton, and I think I might get back to her on this one because I got this on a direct message before, so I might speak to her myself. But this is a nice question actually. What are Timbers' top tips? And then it says in brackets, what a mouthful, for me to get into the BTCC world. Approaching teams directly hasn't seemed to work, and there aren't any comms, reporter, PR jobs out there for me that I can find. I've got a master's degree and try my best to network. I think you answered that before with maybe starting at a lower level. Am I being right?
I think the support paddock is definitely a good place to start. And also, it would be not a direct route, but I started working for a supplier. So it might be that she looked at roles with suppliers who have relationships in the championship or sponsors that are involved. Just try and think a little bit, because there are a limited number of teams on the grid, a limited number of PR roles on the grid. Maybe try and look at it from a slightly different angle. But yeah, the support paddock and club racing is a great place to start, I think, to build a portfolio.
Yeah, we've all done our apprenticeship, haven't we? That's the thing. I'm not saying that she's trying to just jump to the top. That's what we all want to do. But I was lucky that I'd already driven in British touring cars and then got to do the reporting side. But I still wasn't ever live. It was that kind of apprenticeship where they give you something first and you have to learn your ropes, don't you? But fair play. I'll speak to her actually later.
Yeah, cool.
This one, just to go back to not a very nice part of it, Saz5856, going through a bit of discrimination in motorsport myself at the moment. I'd love to know what Zoe's advice would be on how to deal with those situations, especially when it's coming from someone in a position of authority. I'd also love to know about Zoe's journey into motorsport, which we've spoken about. I did my degree over 15 years ago, and there was so little opportunity for females to progress. I know we've touched on a few of those things, but is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think she's welcome to drop me a message if she wants. But if I personally, I think in those situations you need to be really clear about boundaries, because no one can ever call you out for calling someone else out on doing something that's not right. So clear about the boundaries and seek to speak to someone else. Obviously, they need to be mindful of who that is in relation to the person that is the issue. But yeah, I think you have to be clear, and you kind of just really be tough with people sometimes, and just that's not okay, that's not all right, and I'm not happy about that. And if they're being unreasonable, they can't argue, and no one else around them can argue either. She's more than welcome to drop me a message. I'd be more than happy to have a chat if she wants to have a chat about her situation, and I can maybe we can work out together who might be the right person to talk to.
Amazing. That's amazing, Zoe. Thank you. That's so cool. Listen, we've got like 2 minutes, 15 seconds left. So the last thing, the thing I want to ask you about is pit lane connections. Something I seen you doing in the COVID, at the beginning of COVID. Sounds absolutely amazing. What's it about? Worldwide attention. Love it.
Yeah, well, basically, so my one of the things, my whole career, networking has been the thing that's opened all the doors, and finding those opportunities. Loads of jobs come up and disappear before they get advertised. So really building your network is so important. So I set Pit Lane Connections up, one as a support tool for all of the self-employed people who had no work the minute motorsport was cancelled, so that they had a place to communicate and work together and talk, but also to recruit from, to network, collaborate on projects, and just get to know more people. It's so cool. We've had people from Formula One, IndyCar, NASCAR join. Such an awesome split of people. But yeah, it was sort of an idea I came up with in the middle of the night. Those good ideas that just. And then I woke up in the morning and I was like, "What have I done?"
Very much like me. How can we get involved with it? Where is it? It's on Facebook?
It's on Facebook and on LinkedIn.
Okay, and it's Pit Lane Connections.
It is, yes. But essentially for anyone working in the industry, who, it's for the industry really, so.
Amazing. Zoe, can you believe it's been an hour?
No, I can't. Time's gone quite quickly, hasn't it?
Absolutely crazy. Listen, there's 50 seconds left. I will let you say your thanks to everybody, because you've had some beautiful comments tonight, and also people have just so many questions. So over to you, Zoe.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all the amazing support, guys, both for me and my journey, and also for the race team. Literally, we are in the best paddock, I believe, in the world, with the best racing. So we literally couldn't be luckier, really. But yeah, anybody who wants to get in touch, give me a shout, or has any questions, just feel free to get in touch, and see you all at Donington.
Perfect. 18 seconds left, apparently. It's been Nevermind the Ballast. It's been Wednesday. It's been 6 o'clock. It's now 7. I'm going to watch Liverpool lift the trophy. Zoe Timbrell, love that. See you in a bit.
Take care. Well, see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.